Greetings, my name is JC.
And I'm Ian.
And this is the Gamer's Gaiden. In this episode, we're going to be talking about open world games. So, we thought we would go through different aspects of open world games this week in today's episode. We talk about a little bit about the history of it, how Rockstar has impacted the genre, things that we like and dislike about it, and then finish off with some recommendations on open world games that maybe you've played, maybe you haven't. So let's begin by starting off with our history of open world games, and let's get into some games of sort of the open world genre that were the earlier examples of games that we played that were
they'd be early examples because we would have been early versions of us.
Yeah.
I feel like your first open world game probably was some kind of RPG.
Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah, what was it, JC?
So truly the first one that I had played was The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo, and then I guess the Super Nintendo Legend of Zelda also kind of counts, although it's a little less open worldy, but you can it is semi-sandboxy where you can go where you would like and do certain things in certain orders, not so much as the original one, unfortunately, which is kind of like one of the reasons why I sort of like the original a little bit better than the Super Nintendo Zelda. So, Zelda was kind of like the first foray into it, because to be honest, at that age, I was like 6 or something whenever I first played this game. I didn't actually, usually the manual would be read to me, and then my mom or grandmother would sit me down and be like, okay, like this is how you play the game. But that wasn't done for Legend of Zelda because the manual was just frankly too big and the controls were read to me, and then I was told to basically go. So I literally did things in any order and didn't really know what I was supposed to do. So it was truly a vast, at least for like childhood JC, a vast world that I could go explore and find all these cool dungeons, which I honestly, I think I found like dungeon 3 the first. And it wasn't until later that I actually tried to beat the game, like a couple years later that or a year later that I actually like tried to beat the game and beat it. But that was kind of my first experience into what an open world game was or kind of was, until it sort of developed into what it is today. Your first example is similar to another game that I played sort of around the same time, actually.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it really was just like a brief exposure, because I didn't play Zelda.
Okay.
Or a lot of RPGs at the time when I was younger.
Right.
So a lot of stuff was just the idea and concept of an open world game was just kind of foreign to me, I guess.
Yeah, I would say I would agree in the respect that like Zelda was sort of the only time that I had kind of experienced like something that was truly open, and any other game that was open world per se, in the sense that you can do things in any order, I kind of more attribute those to like role-playing games or other like genres that they were also affiliated with. So because there's not, and we'll get into this later, but there's not very many like true 100% open world games. They're generally like multi-genre games, which we kind of talk about in a previous episode if you want to check that out. Ultima was your kind of first foray into
Ultima
sort of the
8,
concept.
I always remember it, Ultima 8, because I'd gone over to a friend's house and he was downstairs playing computer games.
Right.
And I went downstairs and he was sitting at the PC. I think it was a Gateway.
Oh, okay. Wow.
A good old 486. And I'm like, what are you playing? He's like, Ultima 8. I'm like, what's the point? And he was like, he kind of explained a little bit to me, but not really.
Right.
And he was like, you can do whatever you want to. And I was like, whatever you want to? He's like, yeah. And he just like, he climbed onto someone's balcony.
Okay.
And then went in through a door on the second floor.
Oh, okay.
And started like looting the house. And I'm like, what is going on? I've never seen anything like this before. I'm like, dude, can I try this? He's like, no. He shut his computer down and like just he wouldn't let me play.
Oh, jeez.
So it was like I saw this thing. I watched him play it for like probably 20 minutes, half an hour.
Right.
I'm like, this is wild. Like you can just do whatever you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had this idea in my head of like this just crazy game. I've still never played Ultima 8. Played Ultima Online a little bit, but whatever. By that point,
Yeah.
I had higher expectations of an open world game. But no, that was kind of my first sort of like exposure. Which Ultima game was your?
The first Ultimate game that I played was Ultima 4, the Nintendo version of it. I played it
Okay.
in the mid 90s. We had gotten the game used. A friend had gotten the game used. And we were playing through it, and we just found it fascinating because we were big fans of Final Fantasy 1. And that game's fairly linear, although you can get like the orbs in different orders if you really know what you're doing. But this game was sort of like vast, and you could go to any of the cities and get any of the different NPCs on your team and stuff like that, and build your party. Because they weren't like selected at the beginning or given to you part of the story. You asked them to come onto your team, and you could like explore. And a lot of the stuff that
Could they
you
have
had
said
to-
no? Like, is it
there
possible
is
that
a
they would have been
virtue
like,
system in the game that you had to like become the perfect virtuous person in all the different virtues.
oh,
And that was sort of the
that's
objective of
right.
the game. And so I believe some of them wouldn't join you if you weren't like virtuous enough in certain aspects of them, if I recall correctly. It's probably been like 15, 18 years since I played this game. So long time ago. But
Sounds like it's time to replay, JC.
yeah. But yeah, we just found this game fascinating because unlike some other role-playing games at the time, you could basically go and do what you wanted in the orders, and it didn't really guide you along the way, much like the original Zelda, where it didn't really tell you. It's just like, here's a sword,
It's dangerous
go
out
do
there.
it. Yeah, go do you, figure it out. Where this game was very similar, where the king of Britannia basically was like, you must become the most virtuous, go. And you have to become the most virtuous, and you can do that whatever way you want. There are certain dungeons and tablets that you have to find, and you have to figure out where they are. But truly, unless you know what to do and the easiest way to do it, you're not really doing it in a linear way. You're vastly exploring this world without, like, truly blind. You're vastly exploring this world, and it was a pretty good experience. Yeah. And Ian, you have another.
So when
game
I
that
finally
you,
got to play an open world game, it would have been GTA 1.
okay,
Like
yep.
original Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I really love this game.
Oh man, I don't even know how my friend had got a copy of it, because we had at the time, like, I think most of us had a PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing like, I think like Final Fantasy probably 7
Yeah.
and Metal Gear. And then yeah, I showed up at his house the one day, and because usually like we would sit there and like someone would be in like chat rooms, because we were, I don't know, 12 or yeah, like 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the cool thing at the time. Don't judge me. Yeah, and he was just playing this game, and I'm like, dude, what are you playing?
Was this on the computer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, Grand Theft Auto. I'm like, what's happening? And I'm like, can I play this? He's like, yes.
Did you have a gamepad, or did you play with a
We
keyboard?
played with the mouse and keyboard.
Oh, geez.
That was
Well, just a keyboard. The original one, you
That's
moved
right,
the
yeah, it was
arrow
just a
keys.
keyboard.
Yeah. I had one friend who had Grand Theft Auto. Well, I originally played it on the PlayStation. That was my first foray into it, and like, we were so obsessed with kind of the concept of being able to go around and just sort of do anything, and like pick up these little tiny side quests that had nothing to do with the main mission, much like Skyrim, and just go ahead and like do whatever you want, really, in like a gangster mentality, basically.
Well, that was
And-
the thing. Like, I know when we sat down and started playing this, it was just cause mayhem, and you would switch every death.
Yeah.
And then after like weeks of doing that, someone happened to answer one of those payphones,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh,
Yeah, whenever I actually like sat down, I was like, okay, like what is actually this game, right? I'm like, oh, this storyline's actually pretty cool, and I
Yeah.
borrowed the game for like a month or something from my one friend because I originally didn't have it, and I played through the three cities in the original game, and yeah, it was a fantastic game. Um, I I found that it just was easy to get into. You could do whatever you wanted. It had a nice open area in order for you to like be able to tackle certain problems many different ways. Like a lot of the time you get into trouble and you need to like repaint your car
Yeah.
to get away from and replate your car to get away from the police. And you could go to any of the like multiple different stations to be able to do that, right?
Yep.
And yeah, it was just pretty cool. And having an aspect of a game where like the open world actually like you were doing more than just like grinding levels and or just exploring.
Yeah.
And having all those extra little tiny side quests, like those payphones, like they might be like 3-part quests, but they don't have anything to do. A lot of them don't have anything to do with the actual main storyline, which is like the gang that you work for, and then you're working with that storyline, and you're just like completing specific objectives for Tony or whoever, right?
Well, and then like you could get in a cab
Hmm.
and you could pick people up and drop people off.
Yeah. Could you do that in the first one?
I'm pretty sure.
I thought that was just a new thing that you could do in the second one.
Yeah,
don't
maybe they
remember.
added Crazy Taxi in.
Yeah,
Either way.
I don't remember.
I
but
do remember optional things.
Mhm.
The kill frenzies,
Yeah, Kill Frenzy, where you get the skull and
and it would just give you a random weapon. You
Yeah.
had to like just mass. I mean, yeah, it was pretty senseless violence,
Hmm.
but I think that kind of segues into our like next point,
Hmm.
just about the impact that Rockstar in general had.
Yeah, because
on-
they really revolutionized sort of the industry, and everybody sort of followed their example by
Yeah.
the time Grand Theft Auto 3 came out.
Well, and that's we were literally arguing about this earlier because to me I really think that like Grand Theft Auto 3 was kind of the big game changer. Like that's they took all the concepts that they had from the first two games, of that big sprawling environment,
Yeah.
and like decent storytelling,
Mhm.
not amazing, but like pretty good for what they had to work with.
Yeah.
And then they made this like 3D city
Hmm.
that was, it was alive. There was, people walking down the street, cars driving around. It wasn't great, like super in depth, but you had those bonus things. You had the like crazy taxi. You had police missions. You could be an ambulance driver.
Yeah.
There was all those little added things, and the story was fantastic.
Mhm.
Like they actually like kind of elevated storytelling in an open world.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And then really they just improved upon that. Like there was never a dip. It was always like, how much further can we push it? How better can we tell a story? And how more free can we make a player feel
Yeah.
within this like environment?
Yeah.
And I think moving on, like when you look at GTA 3, where you had wingless planes, so you could kind of like fly a little bit, but not really, and it was really hard to find. And then in like Vice City, you have like actual planes and helicopters and boats, and you can just travel around this like
And
huge
motorbikes.
and
They brought back bikes.
motorbikes were the worst.
They were in the original, and they finally brought them back.
Motorbikes weren't usable. Anyways, that's totally a different point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they just pushed and pushed and pushed, and like you look at something like Red Dead Redemption, the first one, where like that it probably is one of the best stories told in an open world.
Yeah, I find that so kind of to fill in your point a little bit to lead to Red Dead Redemption, if I may. I find that like Grand Theft Auto is really great because it's had always had like little iterations. Because there's like London, which I find like they got their storytelling really refined for that one, and then the second one added in a bunch of different iterations, and then the third one, and then there was like the small packs of games, whether it was San Andreas or Vice City or stories for
But
both of
like
those.
those
And
were not small packs.
they
Like
weren't,
they were
but
huge. Just
yes and no, I would say,
each of them was a
because
further leap. Like look at
but how big was the leap, right? Like they took their core content, and they added in another module, and then they added in another module. Is kind of what I'm saying. So
yeah, they've constantly built upon that
yes,
their core principles of like here's like an open world.
yeah, they weren't building something completely new. They were just like building upon their already built castle. And
Yeah.
constantly like adding new rooms to it is kind of what I'm saying. And since they did that with Grand Theft Auto, they were able to make more of a masterpiece with Red Dead Redemption, where they used everything that they learned from all these like smaller games, so to speak, these smaller iterations uh of like, oh, like you mentioned Vice City added in a bunch of vehicles, for example, right? Those vehicles weren't in all those other games. It's
No,
something that they added.
and it added in that verticality with
Right.
planes and helicopters
And
and boats for that matter.
exactly. And there was like kind of like they would say we're going to concentrate on these like two or three new things that we're going to add to the existing game, and they would have all the existing stuff with these two or three different things. So they did that so much. Once they were like, let's make a Western, they had all this experience, and I think that's really what made and why they don't make why there was such a gap between 1 and 2, so that they could do that again, because then they learned again from 4 and online, and like the DLCs from those games and stuff like that, so that they could be like, okay, we're gonna sort of build our experience and knowledge set for our development team, and then release like these great Western games.
It's true. I mean, like the first Red Dead Redemption was like the storytelling in the first Red Dead Redemption was really what got me. It was very much a the John Marston's not a very likable character at the beginning.
No.
But he really grows on you, and you really attach to him, and you really care about this guy.
That's kind of true too
all the
about
way
like
through.
the family in 4, right? Like the people you're working for in 4, they're kind of dislikable, and some of them become more redeemable as time goes on.
I will say, I thought GTA 4, even though like visually it was a huge jump and they'd added in so many new things, it did feel like a little bit of a step back because San Andreas was so expansive with things that you could do and how you could shape the character and tell the story. I found the story in 4 was a little bit weak. I mean, I've heard really good things about the like expansion packs for 4, like the Ballad of Gay Tony was apparently really good, but I never played it.
Right.
And then there was the Lost and Departed,
Yeah.
which added the amazing motorcycle control. It let you stay on a motorcycle instead of flying 400 feet the moment you hit
Or
a
going
manhole.
like this or going like this.
Yeah, like it
Which
really
constantly happened in Vice City, but
it really made it functional. And then like that then Red Dead Redemption was their next release, and that was kind of like it. Like they just, it was so like focused. And
Right.
but I think you're right, like, and then you move on to GTA 5,
Yeah.
which
they
has
they
a lot.
test things, and they piecemeal like these handful of things that they're going to work on for these GTA games. They're like, okay, well, that didn't really work in this respect, so maybe it worked this way, and well, this worked in this way, and then you pick and choose from your toolbox, and then you make
Basically, yeah. But I like
something unique and nice.
I really wanted to bring this up though when you said, hey, let's do an episode on open world games. I was like, cool, I really want to talk about Rockstar, because even though I know other companies have done great things with open world games, like
Ubisoft does a lot of them.
I mean, if Ubisoft is releasing something, it's going to be an open world game at this point.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the next Rayman game is going to be an open world
please
game.
no.
But no, I think I think Rockstar has probably done the most.
Well, that's what they do. That's
Yeah.
literally what they're known for.
And the
It's
thing
kind
is,
of like RPGs and Bethesda. You wouldn't expect anything else from them.
I mean, anyways, I I don't think we're gonna get another traditional Grand Theft Auto game or Red Dead Redemption game again. They're
And to clarify about the Bethesda comment, I'm talking about the core Bethesda team, not the subsidiaries that they own. Continue.
at this point we are just gonna get open world experiences from Rockstar.
For sure.
I think all they're gonna deliver is a true open world experience, much like they have with the GTA Online and Red Dead Online, where they're just like,
that's where their fan base is.
here's
Right?
an open world.
If they were to release like a linear game that, even a multi-linear game that's like very story driven and like a Uncharted or something like that, their fan base would basically revolt. They've pigeonholed themselves into a company that does something that it would be
it's
very
true.
hard for them to do something else.
I don't think
They could like publish something else, obviously, but like I think that if their main game all of a sudden changed like that, then there'd be pitchforks.
Oh yeah, I mean even LA Noire, which came out.
Well, that was
360
developed by a
era.
different company, and then Rockstar picked the game up, and then they were like, this game's not going to be successful. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, and you think it's going to be super successful, but if you want this game to really be released to market, you're adding in these features, and then any of the open world features.
Here's an open world.
Yeah, that's basically what happened with that game.
Which I will say was kind of cool driving around, the
old New York or whatever.
old Los
Chicago?
Angeles.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember what city it was.
Because you eventually do the Black Dahlia, which
Okay.
was kind of cool. Like
I
it was
just put that game down.
You know what? I loved that game.
Cool.
I thought that was a very underappreciated Rockstar title, but ultimately, I don't think we're gonna get the story-driven experiences from them anymore.
Okay, you think it's like only going to be sort of like online?
I think we're only they're not releasing any like single-player content for Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, they said that they're not going to do any.
They didn't release any for GTA 5. Even though initially they said
think they
they were
canceled some of
going
it.
to.
Yeah.
They had said initially they would, and then it
I mean,
became,
so
we're going to focus on the online stuff instead.
to sort of sidestep a little bit, Rockstar is the company that kind of proved that the loot boxing industry is $1 billion industry and can work, and this is how it works, right? And everybody sort of follows them in that respect as well.
It's not even the loot
So-
boxing. It's digital currency.
Yeah.
Like they're the
loot boxes,
you are-
skins,
this is
whatever the
the-
case is.
I'm going to
Basically, you can blame them.
I'm going to convert my real money into your Grand Theft Auto bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me buy stuff within that world. And now
Yeah.
I'm going to buy an apartment.
Them and Bejeweled are kind of the origin of those, but we can talk about that in a different episode.
It's
but,
true. It really, yeah. But
yeah.
that's why
I
Grand Theft Auto
definitely-
5 is still one of the most played games.
Right.
It's massive.
It's because it hasn't been updated. That's why. There's no 6.
No, yeah.
But I'm not sure. Maybe if their online game stagnates a little bit, they might release a new core game. And like I haven't played through Red Dead Redemption and the prequel, so depending on if there's anything else they could do with that story, maybe I think they'd be wise to make another one of those. More so than a Grand Theft Auto game, maybe.
The thing at this point, I would like to see them kind of branch out and do something a little bit different. We've had the crime focused story, and then we've had the Western. I want them to stretch their legs, but I don't think they will. There's no point in them doing it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have to get.
Plus, their
writing team or something.
their creative director literally he recently stepped down.
Yeah.
So
probably because it's all going to be online.
That's the speculation. But the thing is, you can't deny the impact that they've had on the genre.
Yeah, for sure. Because so many companies have sort of followed them. Because like even the newest Metal Gear Solid game had a lot of like vast open world sandboxiness in it, and like that was definitely an effect of like the Rockstar games, and
it was a huge departure. You could now
Skyrim
go into the environment and decide how you want to deal with the situation. when has a Metal Gear game ever been like, oh, it's okay, you figure it out?
Yeah.
It's like, no, do it this way, do it right, or you're going to keep doing it until you do it right.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, Skyrim, I think even Skyrim to an extent has been affected by it. Yes, Morrowind was very much, and Oblivion were very much similar. Maybe Oblivion is more of the right choice for this. I actually haven't played Oblivion that much in comparison, so forgive me if I'm
It was
slightly
really
off the
good.
mark on this.
I liked it.
But so like what I feel is like they had this like vast open like sandbox and area, but they didn't really have that many like side quests. And then they saw like how Grand Theft Auto did their open world like formula, and they're like, oh, like if we add in like all these extra like side quests and like these like multi-linear like quests all over the place, then we can sort of use that idea to make our game even better, right?
Well, yeah,
I think that's how it kind of affected sort of like the Oblivion Skyrim
I think this
game.
basically changed how Ubisoft makes games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they went from, I mean, Far Cry was a first-person shooter.
Right.
Like, the original Far Cry was just
But it was like a first-person shooter on a large like island, right? Where you could go anywhere.
you couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, you couldn't.
It was fairly like you had level. It was level based.
Oh, it wasn't until the second one that
It wasn't until the second one that it became open world.
Yes. I'm remembering now.
And then, but nobody liked the second one because it was way too confusing, and it was way too open.
Probably because it alienated their original fan base, and it
did.
created a new fan base, and then the third one just kind of built on that. So
And again, the third one was like the defining moment.
right.
That was when they hit that perfect balance, and basically found the formula to make all of their games since then.
Yeah.
Now everything is an open world with, things to hunt, things to collect, bases to clear. Yeah. It's just a pile of stuff.
Yeah. I guess I'll finish off by saying I kind of do find it unfortunate that the Rockstar company isn't necessarily like potentially we won't get as many and we're not getting as many sort of like single player driven content games from them anymore, because I do really like their games. And another aspect that I kind of wanted to mention was that like I find the older 2D Grand Theft Auto games have now been shadowed and forgotten simply because of the switch over to 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate because I think if more people remembered, like, for example, Grand Theft Auto London, we probably would have gotten like a 3D remake of it. And because basically what happened was we got 3D remakes of the first 3 cities in the first Grand Theft Auto, and that's really it. And the second one, although I didn't like it as much as the first actual 2, GTA L and GTA, the second one had a really cool faction system in it that I don't really feel that you get as much. It's more like there's still the gang turf wars and stuff like that, but the way that the faction system worked hasn't really been reproduced in the way that it originally worked. And I think it'd be cool to actually have sort of like that sort of like sandboxiness of like you complete certain missions and their turf goes into certain areas and you could choose which faction to work for, because they took their original concept and really built that idea of like, let's make this aspect open world as well, or sort of like multi-linear.
Well, and it lets you play Kingmaker.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool, and we haven't really gotten it in the same way since then. And I truly feel that's because, as I mentioned, these older games have been overshadowed simply because they just constantly reproduce the first one. Like the 3 cities are 3 different PlayStation 2 games. And the 3D brought, like, that was a time whenever more people were playing games. More people got invested and introduced to Grand Theft Auto due to better advertising from the budgets. Many different reasons, but I find it unfortunate how those the Grand Theft Auto London and GTA 2 sort of got overshadowed because of that. But yeah, I guess we should probably go on into unless you want.
No. I mean, we probably should go on to something instead of me talking about Rockstar for 45 minutes.
So let's go on to the different aspects of open world games that we really like, and then what we dislike. So one thing that I really like about the open world games is that, like honestly, my favorite type of RPG is multilinear RPGs, or what I call multilinear RPGs, and where it's really you have multiple different choices to do what it is that you uh, can do throughout the story of the content of the game to get to the final objective. And in addition to that, sort of like sub quest lines. MMOs made me a really big fan of quest lines and things like that, and it gives you a lot to do within these games, and that's kind of like my favorite thing about like either like open world games or sandbox games is whenever they have all these separate missions and stuff like that. Like I wasn't super invested in Morrowind for multiple different reasons. But I went back and played it, and I did find the game was kind of lacking in comparison to the games that I was playing at the time. But whenever I actually, for my D&D group, as I mentioned the show before, they were all playing Skyrim, and I was like, wait, I should probably give this a shot. And like, yeah, like that, because it had all these like extra quest lines and subquests and just random quests and everything like that, like made me want to go to all these like different places and explore this like massive world and stuff like that. And I enjoyed the game a lot more because there was so much to do, and that's the main reason why I like open world games.
Yeah, man. I mean, my first playthrough of Skyrim, I didn't know there was dragons because I didn't go to the first town
Right.
for probably 30 hours.
Mm.
And then I went, and you kill that first dragon, and then dragons start showing up throughout the game. I was like, what?
You're forced to.
You do not have to do that section right away.
The first part of the game is you coming down on the trolley,
Well,
and
I'm
then
okay.
you see dragon there.
Yeah, you see
Oh,
the
you mean
dragon.
more dragons?
But when you kill your first
Yeah,
dragon, then dragons show up in the world. Then they're just kind of flying around.
Right. Okay. I see what you're
Whereas, like, yeah, I
Okay,
saw
I
that.
see
Okay,
what
I
you
saw
mean.
that first dragon,
saying.
and then when you get to Whiterun and
Mhm.
do that quest line there, I didn't go to Whiterun. I just
Go this way.
Yep.
Yeah.
I took
Yeah,
a
for sure.
left.
That's like everybody's experience in the game, where it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going that way or that way, and most people's choices are different.
Yeah, and it was
Choose a corner, go anywhere you want.
pretty much.
Yeah.
And I'd seen a whole bunch of the world and done a bunch of things, and I was like, man, maybe I'll go back and.
It really harkens back to the original Zelda game, where it sort of makes you feel like you have the choice of doing whatever it is that you want,
Mhm.
and it does have an impact. Like, regardless of if it does or doesn't, because, like, let's be honest here, the Skyrim, as our example, the main game content's like 20 hours, give or take a few.
Yeah, but
Like, it's
I
very
would say that
short.
9 times out
And
of
then-
10, people either don't do it, or by
Yeah.
the time they actually do it, they're like a living god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Like,
And like it's like, yeah, 100, 200 plus hours.
like,
of, just
okay,
extra
I
stuff.
guess I gotta kill this big dragon now.
Yeah. And,
Again.
you know, like we were saying, Rockstar really influenced this, but I think MMOs really influenced it as well. To be honest with you.
I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, the first time I played World of Warcraft, I was like, what's happening here? Like, I had played EverQuest.
Yep.
And if you want to hear my story about stealing something from a guy, it's episodes back. But the first time I played Warcraft, it was just like, oh man, I want to keep playing this.
Yeah.
I want to keep exploring this world
Mm-hmm.
and like
And
learning about it.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to sort of like the second biggest point of why I like open world games so much, is because you can really tag this on to anything. It's sort of like the action of the different genres, right? Like you can have action in any type of genre. You can literally have an open world-esque style in any genre that you want. Yeah, it can be done. Some of them maybe not so much, like a puzzle game, but still,
Oh, it exists, man.
you can definitely do your best. But yeah, that's the second reason why I like it so much, just because like yeah, it's everywhere. It's fun. It's yeah. Do you have any?
But let's get into the reason why we dislike
Mhm.
open world games so much.
Yeah, you
There's
should probably start with
way
this.
too much to do. There's so much, and my time is so finite.
I guess the risk of not actually completing a game is higher because game fatigue is definitely a thing where you've been playing a game way too long and it's just like I just don't really want to play it anymore. And that's what happened with me with Skyrim. I've never beaten the main storyline of Skyrim, but I've put 150 hours into it. I've beaten the vampire DLC thingy, but I like in a bunch
Yeah.
of the other cities and quests. Like I have the strategy guide for it, and I'm pretty sure I did like 80% of the stuff that was in the strategy guide. But
It's
I made
true.
it to chapter 3 of 5 of the. I'm like, okay, when can I shout? Okay, cool. I'm good. I'm gonna go,
Like
and I'll see you later.
that's just it. Like it's the fatigue is so real.
Mm-hmm.
And unless your story is going to be so engaging
Yeah.
that you're going to keep me there the entire time, like Red Dead 2,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know, like, I needed to know what was going to happen to those
Right.
characters. I really wanted to, and they pulled me through. I didn't do a lot of the optional stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to, just kind of focus on the main quest. And I still probably put 50 hours in that game,
Yeah.
but I don't have 50 hours all the time to be playing everything.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
It's
And that actually brings me to another point of where I really dislike open world games is because generally the main storyline is pretty weak. Like 9 times out of 10. It's not
I don't know.
a Rockstar game.
I'm gonna disagree with. Well, okay, it's
Like-
not a Rockstar game.
Like there's a lot of open world games that are out there that are just like were created to be open world, and it's like your main storyline is weak. Like Skyrim is one of those games. I'm sorry, it's one of those games. The main storyline is weak. The only reason why people like that game is because it's an open world.
That's a hot take.
Yeah, it is. And fight me in the comments on it. Go ahead. But no, like I've never heard a person go on and on and on about the main storyline of Skyrim. Never. I've only heard people go on about the cool things that they did, and all those are side quests.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I'll give you that.
yeah,
Anytime I talk about Skyrim, it's the crazy
exactly.
other stuff that I've
And
done as opposed to
it's because the main storyline is pretty weak. It could be really cool, but it like in comparison to their other content, that's not what they were concentrating on.
It's okay. It actually, all right. I'll give you that. The spoiler alert. You're either picking between two garbage factions to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have a good option. It's pick between the bad guys or the bad guys.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, and so people who make open world games spend so much time on this concept that they feel like they should be making because they're so successful and great because Grand Theft Auto and MMOs that it's like, well, we have to do it. And it's like, well, it would have been so much better. Like, for example, if Uncharted was open world, I can guarantee you people wouldn't have liked it as much.
No, I don't think it would have been as good. But that's the thing about
And it's catering to different audiences.
because it pulls you from
pretty
set
much.
pieces to set pieces. Like you're watching a movie
For sure.
that you're
Or you're interacting with
engaging
one.
in.
But
Yeah, you're interacting with a movie. But I've had, even talking, I guess, slightly
like-
poorly about Ubisoft. I've had amazing experiences in open world Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed 4.
For sure.
I love that game, and I love the story. I love the story of the Ezio trilogy.
Right, but
Those were great.
So that and Metal Gear 5 are good examples of what I also want to talk about is that the main thing that they concentrated on was their main story, and then they're like, well, let's add in some sandboxy stuff afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And then that'll be kind of like an after effect versus like any instance where it's the inverse of that, like I don't like that as much, where it's really fun, but you will get fatigued, and it kind of comes back full circle where it's like a game like Skyrim, and it's just like I know so many people who have not completed Skyrim, but who have put in more than 100 hours into that game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's not a problem. I'm one of those people. I don't think it's a problem. It's just like, okay, well, all right. Interesting. It's just an interesting thing to think about, I think.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we dislike about open world games is,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a long time.
Yeah.
They have way too much stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes your main story sucks.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, not all the time.
Well, none of it sucks. It's just generally weaker.
It's not.
And there's
Yeah,
a lot of other games out there that are better for playing a storyline or what have you, or that are also Anyway.
I mean, you're blazing your own trail, man.
Yep.
You're writing your own story.
Mm-hmm.
You're the author.
For sure. But it's like people who play D&D, like I've literally played with people who it's just like, okay, here's the map of Faerun. You start in this city. Let me know what you do. People get bored of that so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, well, I'll go over this, see what happens. And you're just rolling on random tables. It's literally what an open world game is. Right?
Yeah.
But I've always had players get bored of that. But if I give them a storyline to go through, where they can do anything that they want because there's open world features to it.
Yes, but there's an overall, like, purpose. This is why you're here.
Yeah. But if I concentrated 9/10 of my time on all the open world stuff, that would have been more interesting to the players, and they would have gotten tired of it.
I mean, what I loved about the original Fallout games was even though they had a purpose, that was one of my favorite things about Fallout, like the original Fallout games. Being tasked with something, having so long to complete it, and eventually finding out that, all right, you didn't do it, so your village died. Like you didn't succeed.
That was a cool thing in the difference between Fallout and Baldur's Gate. Like we're talking Fallout 1, the isometric version.
Yes.
Not
the good one.
Yeah. Well, which one are you saying is the good one? The isometric one, or are you saying Fallout 3 is a good one?
I'm saying the isometric one.
Okay.
Because the old ones it was that, like, here's your quest. This is why you're here. We need you to go out in the world and do this. And then you go out in the world and you're like, wait, I can do this. I can do this. I can do what? But you just get so wrapped up in everything else.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, your village died.
Yeah.
You should have done your job.
So just in case people are curious, this is a cool thing I found difference between Fallout original and Baldur's Gate was that you had the same ideology where like it was like, oh, like the Nashkel mines have an issue and it should be dealt with, but you choosing to wait 20-30 hours to go do that literally has no repercussions. But Fallout's like, yeah, your town is dead.
Yeah. You can keep going. But that job you were going to do, you didn't do.
Yeah. But I think that attributed to more endings, which is cool. But yeah. Anyway, I've mentioned a few times open world and sandbox, and there is a reason why. It's because I personally like to differentiate the difference between open world and sandbox. And I kind of feel like the definition for open world is a little too vague, because if you think about it, open world is like what? Well, define open world game for me.
Well, I mean, I guess it's something that has just a wide open map.
Right.
Sometimes, you see it all immediately. Other times you need to climb a Ubisoft tower and unlock the next section. But
yeah,
it's pretty much an open map that you can explore however you feel like.
Right. And most people, I think, would agree with the definition that's at least close with that. And if you think of like some games that are like that, they're not actually open world games. For example, Metal Gear Solid 5. It's a sandboxy game more than an open world game.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate, it's more of a sandboxy game than an open world game. But with a definition, you could define it as an open world game, and it's not really an open world game. Like, if you try and argue that point, you could come up with some pretty good arguments that it is, and you can come up with some pretty good arguments that it isn't. I find that it's just a little too wishy-washy of a definition, and it's like, well, like, I'm not sure. Are these other games really like open world, or are they not? Like, I'm not really sure. I've never really been convinced that some of these RPGs, like that have like a large sandbox element to them. Like, are they open world? Are they not? They have elements of it. It kind of goes into the whole kind of multi-genre thing that we've talked about before.
And that's what we were talking about when we first sat down. It was, you're like, but what is an open world? And I'm like, well, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sandbox you can play in. But it's a lot of these times, it's a sandbox, yes, but it has like predefined rules and a story that you're kind of pulled along with.
Yeah.
You know, whether you want to or not, whether you want to do the main quest in Skyrim or not,
Yep.
the fun that you're going to have is doing different quests.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, or exploring dungeons. Whereas I think something that actually would be a true open world game, like Minecraft, where it just dumps you in a sandbox, it's like, figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you're mentioning I guess it's just really the way that you look at it, and I just find it really interesting, and that's why I kind of like you mentioned Minecraft, like Terraria and No Man's Sky are kind of in the same category, where you basically like these are kind of like true open world, air quotes on that,
Because it's a sandbox.
it's a huge,
that you get
massive,
dumped in.
just like sandbox that you can get in there and do literally anything that you want, and there's really not fully a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can turn on survival mode in Minecraft, but you like builder mode. A lot of people will just play that.
That was our argument.
just-
I was like survival mode. That's the purpose of Minecraft. And you're like, well, what about builder mode where you
Yeah.
just build? I'm like, I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, fine. You're right.
Yeah, it's just or like for example, The Division, like that technically falls in the same lines underneath the definition of what an open world is, the game is, but it's not really. I think most people wouldn't consider it an open world game. It has elements of it.
It does.
And it kind of harkens to a previous episode that we spoke about multi-genres, and like really it's kind of like these like Venn diagrams of just an amalgamation of like what this game is. And I think a lot of people just kind of use the open world definition for granted in some respects, where it's like, is Harvest Moon open world? Tell me it is. Tell me it isn't.
I think, I don't know. I think for me, I like to be able to experience like verticality
Right.
in an open world.
For sure.
You
Like,
know,
there's-
whether that's being able to climb a building
Yeah.
or climb a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I can see it in the distance,
Right.
I want to be able to get there. I
Yeah.
want to be able to explore.
Like an Anthem.
It's 2020, JC.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. We forgot about that.
You
game.
you can't talk about Anthem anymore.
Sorry, it was just too easy. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like if I can see it,
Mm-hmm.
I should be able to get to it.
Exactly.
You know, if you wanna block me off
Yeah.
when I get close to it, okay. I understand that everything has to have limitations.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's part of it. You're blocked in with mountains. You're closed off by oceans.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. But I still want to be able to get as close to it as I can.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
You know, stop me at the base of that mountain.
Yeah. I just find like sandbox and open world are so close that I feel hopefully over time our definitions of them have sort of like spliced a little bit more, so that it's not like easily argumentative that you can say like Mass Effect's an open world game because it has elements of it, because you can go to any planet and collect resources.
I can tell you this much, JC. When I was 15, I would have punched somebody for an open world game.
Oh, for sure.
To be able to sit down and spend like 200 hours in something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sign me up.
Yep.
Here's all of my money. But now, I'm like, nah. Give me 8 to 10 hour experience. You know, let me like buckle in, enjoy that ride,
Right.
get me out.
I suppose, though, one thing to consider before we get into our final segment of recommendations is that a good aspect of open world, we're sort of bouncing a little back and forth here, but a good aspect of it is that the open world format or the sandbox format is really, and it enables you to just play for 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I
that's
can
true.
play Grand Theft Auto and load it up and play it for an hour and then like not really accomplish anything. Same with Skyrim. I'm not really like tasked an assignment where like I specifically need to do something. I just find one of those quest lines. I go ahead and I complete it maybe in 20 minutes, and then I
That's true. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
it's kinda
I can
like the
happily sit
influences.
down and sail in Assassin's Creed, like
Yeah.
Black Flag, for like an hour
mhm.
and just have fun doing that, exploring islands, and then shutting it down and not feeling like I wasted my time.
Yeah, and I think that attribute of it kind of really comes from its influences that have come from MMOs, where, they've taken a lot of stuff in their history, and you can kind of just sit down and play an MMO for half an hour or an hour. And I know the hardcore MMO players would be like, I play MMOs for 12 hours, and you shouldn't play for less than a day. But okay,
Get good,
yes,
noob.
get good, noob. But yeah, it is a format of game that, in a lot of respects,
Yeah,
you can just sit down and play for a little bit, and then forget about it and come back to it later.
That's true.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get into some recommendations for open world games that we think you should check out if you haven't already. Ian?
So I wanted to mention Dying Light.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a sequel coming out, and it was a pretty big game, but I feel like it's kind of forgotten a lot. Like it's a first person
like
survival horror kind of, but like a really heavy focus on the survival aspect of it, because you are like, you're picking up equipment, you're scavenging for equipment, you're building your own stuff, and you have this like pretty big world,
right,
with a really good sense of verticality too. Like they have a whole parkour kind of climbing system in there, which is like straight out of Mirror's Edge. So there's a lot to this that is a whole lot of fun, and it's multiplayer.
Yeah, I remember. I agree. I remember whenever this game first came out, there was a lot of people talking about it, and unfortunately, I think it's a game that some people did potentially miss, because there was a lot of zombie games that were out there, and this might have been a little bit overshadowed during that time.
And I get that there's fatigue in that genre,
for sure,
but it's for sure worth checking out. I'm pretty sure you can pick this up for under $20 at this point. So if you haven't, it's worth looking into.
Your second one?
Again, I wanted to throw something out that kind of got overlooked a little bit,
right?
But Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah,
it was an Xbox One exclusive. It is available on PC now.
Yeah, now
but
it is.
This was like Insomniac's Spider-Man before they made Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that they'll make a Sunset Overdrive 2, because this game was so much fun.
I'm pretty sure we're going to get Spider-Man 2 before we get Sunset Overdrive 2.
We will probably get Spider-Man 2 before this. But this game was great. Like, again, super underappreciated. Yes, okay, they're kind of zombies, but this was just so much fun. There was so much to this game. The world was like vibrant and colorful, which you don't necessarily always get.
Right.
There wasn't vehicles. You traveled the city on by grinding rails and phone, like electrical wires. So it was a lot of that, or running.
Right.
Which, okay, less running because you're usually going to grind on stuff. But it was so incredibly fun and so unique. So, Sunset Overdrive. Yeah. It's worth checking out. It's probably a Game Pass game. Again, I'm not sponsored by Game Pass. Microsoft, if you want to sponsor me, yes, please.
He shills for you enough.
I do. Game Pass is so good.
Okay.
JC, do you have a recommendation? Is Baldur's Gate 2? Is that the one with the space hamster?
That is the one with the giant space hamsters. But good memory. But I don't really consider it an open world game. So like, other than like your traditional ones that a lot of you have played or that we've already mentioned in the show, such as the Grand Theft Auto series and Skyrim, those are kind of like my games that I kind of consider like more true to like the open world concept, with actually having like multilinear. Like, whenever I think of open world games, those are kind of like the game and the franchise that I think of. If I were to suggest a specific Grand Theft Auto game, though, I would suggest Vice City.
Oh,
that was I just love the attitude of that game, and it's set in the 80s, so it makes it fun.
Probably had one of the best soundtracks.
It definitely did, yeah. I really like Grand Theft Auto London. That's probably my favorite Grand Theft Auto game, but I know it's not as accessible for some people because going back to that game isn't as easy. So yeah, Vice City. You can get it on multiple platforms. It's
I think you can, I think I have it on my phone.
Yeah, there is a phone version of it actually. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have that on my phone. Actually, no, I wouldn't. I would have San Andreas because
Yeah.
I thought San Andreas was a much better game.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Vice City's still really good.
Yeah. So that's kind of like my suggestions. I do really agree with the Spider-Man suggestion, though. Although I've I haven't played Spider-Man. I've seen my friends play Spider-Man for maybe about 10 hours. And I've watched people online play that game. It looks like the Batman games, but a little bit more open. So you kind of more like Arkham City, I guess, where it was kind of nice and open, and you could kind of just go wherever you wanted. So I guess maybe I suggest that game.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
not the best
Spider-Man is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it all the way up until the ending. I hated the final boss fight, but
That's because you had a hard time with it, though.
I had a really hard time with it, but
Yeah.
and because of
persevered.
that, I hated it so much. That game. Anyways, I won't get
Yeah.
into that. But no,
Huge difficulty spike with the end boss, and Ian was pissed.
for Ian, because Ian's horrible at video games. But what about you guys? What's your favorite open world game?
Mhm.
Did we mention it this episode, or is it something that I totally missed?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
Let us know down in the comments.
Yeah, and thanks for sticking with us, especially if you're still around and listening. If you like our content, be sure to check out our other videos. We release the podcast episode on Wednesdays and other episodes on Mondays and Fridays. So we'll see you in the next episode.
You know what? I'm gonna say
Sunset Overdrive and Spider-Man.
Yeah. Sorry. Here I am making edits for JC. Hi, future JC. You can cut it right here.